Alright, so today, boys and girls, what we're going to do is use what we've learned about perspective drawing to draw in two-point perspective. So you've covered one-point perspective, which begins with a leading plane. Now we're going to move into two-point perspective, which begins with a leading edge. And you'll see the difference as we go. So let's get into it. What you're going to do first of all is go to our Paintz.app. Paintz.app. And we need to set up the screen. You'll want to set it up with the pixels. So I click here on this icon and it gives me the resize. And we're going to have our canvas built with pixels. And this takes a little bit of doing on your part. You'll have to see what your screen will allow on your Chromebook or your iPad or your other device. But what you want to do is just move these up and down until they get to the right size to fill your screen, because we want to work as big as possible. So right here it says 1280. That 1280 is obviously the longer edge of this canvas here. If this white part is the canvas, the 1280 is the longer part. So I could actually go longer if I wanted to. The 720 is this up and down. Now that's a nice HD. So I'm going to keep it at 720 by 1280. Could I enlarge it? Yes. And all you have to do is click here and make it bigger and wider by playing with these settings. All right. So I like the size of this. Again, I said it's a nice HD size. So I'm going to stick with it. All right. The next thing we're going to do is make sure we have, I would say, give yourself, for this, give yourself at least a 2-line setting. Give yourself a 2-line setting. And we're going to make sure we have line selected. And this should be black on the outside, white on the inside. That means the left click is black, the right click is white. So what we're going to do then, once we have our straight line tool, is we're going to bring our mouse down about a little bit under halfway down. So if we go from the top to the bottom, again 720 pixels, we're going to go somewhere down here about maybe 3/4 of the way down the page. And I'm going to hold the shift key as I left click and drag. So again, hold the shift key, left click and drag. You'll notice right here didn't quite make it off the canvas. So I'm going to hold the shift key, left click and drag one more time just to close that gap, because as you'll remember in the last video, if you don't close off those gaps, it lets the paint into that area. Alright, and as I said in the introduction, two-point perspective begins with a leading edge rather than a leading plane. And so what we're going to do again is hold the shift key, keeping the tool the same, 2-line thickness and straight line tool, and we're going to begin above the horizon about, I would say, if this is the halfway point, we're going to begin about 3/4 of the way to the left. So about 1/4 of the way in from the left, we'll start. And I'm going to hold the shift key and I'm going to come above and below the horizon. And that will be our leading edge. Now, to set this up, what we're going to do is then take the top of this point and we're going to draw a line back. Now you don't have to hold the shift key now, but we're going to use the 2 points. These are called vanishing points. The vanishing points are located on these 2 corners. There's one over here. This is a vanishing point right here. And your other vanishing point would then be over here. Now we could put them off the page, but we're not going to. We're going to keep it simple and use the horizon line as our vanishing point. Where the horizon line touches the edge of the canvas will be our vanishing point. So if you connect the top and the bottom to the vanishing point, you're going to be in good shape. Now that bottom one looks a little off, so let me hit Control Z, and redo that bottom one a little bit. That looks better. Alright. So again, we're just setting up right now. We're giving ourselves a framework. Control Z. I don't like where that started. The framework is an important part. So we're going to make sure we want to do well on this framework. All right, then what we're going to do is go to about the halfway point. If we kind of estimate the halfway point from the center, or from the left edge to the center, right about here is the halfway point. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go a little bit to the right of the halfway point, and I'm going to again hold the shift key, drag my line down till it touches, and then I'm going to go about halfway between this leading edge and the vanishing point, and I'm going to put another line down. And again, I'm holding the shift key while I draw it so that it locks it into a perfectly perpendicular line. All right, so that's a good start. So now this is where the kind of the magic begins. What we're going to do is start to erase, and that will create this illusion that the surfaces of our form are solid. And so we're going to come up here and grab the eraser tool. Now you might want to grab a bigger eraser tool. So I'm going to go up to, let's try a 10. Yeah, it might make it easier if you grab a 10. And what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this line because we don't need this. This is right in our house, and we don't need it. And this, by the way, is going to be a house. And so we want to get as close as we can. This takes a little bit of doing, and you can always hit, remember, your friend is that Control Z button. Always Control Z if you need to erase. We can leave that little point there. Oops, that's the horizon line. I don't want to get rid of the horizon line. Let's leave that. Get rid of this. And then over here, we're going to get rid of, these are called orthogonals. The orthogonals are the receding lines. The diagonal lines that recede to the vanishing point are called orthogonals. So we're going to get rid of the orthogonals. And you can clean this up later, but right now we're just going to erase. And what I like to do is go right up next to it and then drag away. For some reason that works for me. If I go up right next to the drawing and I drag away, it works. Okay. Alright, so now you can see, if we just looked at this, this kind of looks like a solid box in what we call two-point perspective. And we're going to do some fun things with this now. But to set it up, we want to go to the line tool, and we're going to drop this down a little bit. Actually, we're going to go all the way down to a 1. Why? Because we want to get rid of some of these lines. We're just going to create a framework right now, and we're going to end up getting rid of these lines. So less to erase if you go with a 1. So we're going to take the 1, and watch this. What we're going to do is we're going to find the center of this plane. Now, how do you do that? Well, you could guess, but the better way to do this is simply to draw diagonal lines from corner to corner, which will tell you exactly where the center of that plane resides. Like that. And you could do the same thing on the front. You could drag across and drag across. Again, this is going to tell you exactly. So we know right here is the center of that plane, and we know this is the center of this plane. Okay, so this is where the fun begins. Again, we're going to measure, and we have to decide where we want the roof. Do we want the front roof over here, or do we want the front of the roof over here? That's kind of what we have to decide before we continue. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start here in the center. I'm going to put my cursor right in the center of this front plane, and I think I'm going to try, for now, I'm going to try the peak right up here. So I'm going to put the peak of the house right about there. Maybe something like that, maybe. But again, this is kind of your own design, so you can draw it however you want. All right, and then if I drag this down, and again, I don't hold the shift key now. I'm just going to drag it down. I'll see how I like this. Maybe I like it, maybe I don't. And I can always hit Control Z. So if I wanted to draw it like this, that would be the front of my house. And the roof, the side of the roof would be over here. I kind of like that. I do kind of like that. And we could put some doors over here. So let's stick with that. And then what we'll do is we'll come from this corner here. And I'm not holding the shift key, but I am drawing down to the vanishing point. I'm going to draw it down to the vanishing point. And then what I'm going to do is take this line right here. I'm going to make a line that's perpendicular, or actually parallel to this line, and I'm going to put it right here from this corner of the roof up till it touches. Okay, and what you get there is now the framework of a house. So if we come in with our eraser tool now and get rid of what we don't need, and let me try this zoom tool. I wonder if we can zoom in. Yeah, down here in the corner, if you click on the zoom tool, it might be helpful when we get in and try to erase some of this. Alright, so let's find our eraser tool, which is right here. And if I can find my... Oh, there it is. I have to make it bigger so I can see it. So if I come up to a 10 and just bring it down here, left click and drag that eraser tool. Excellent. Left click and drag that eraser tool. Alright, then we don't need this anymore, so we're going to get rid of this line. And what we want to do is make these planes look solid. And we could actually get rid of this line. I don't know if I want to get rid of that yet, so I'm going to leave it. Kind of know where the center is here, so I'm going to leave that center, but we don't need the X. We don't need the X, but I am going to leave that just so I know where the center of the plane is, because that's where I'm going to put the door, or one of the doors. Let's go ahead and erase all this. Good. Alright, let's zoom back out and see what we have here. So yeah, there it is. It looks more like a house. It's starting to look more like a house now. And if you don't like this line, we could probably get rid of this line. Let me see if I can do that. If I erase this, let's see if that makes it look a little more solid. Yeah, it certainly does. And what I can do is also come back, and remember we used the third line thickness. Go back to my straight line tool with the third line thickness. Now I can redraw these lines that I want to keep. Once I know what I want to keep, I can go back and redraw those lines because I know I like those lines. There we go. So now we've got a pretty good looking house. And again, it's in 2-point perspective. So what we're going to do here is we're going to actually use this as a point to draw a doorway. Alright, so here's what we're going to do. Let's go ahead and we could take our our line tool and drop it down to a 1. And we can draw right there above the door. So we want the door to go just above halfway, I'm thinking. In fact, I could take the halfway point from the top to the bottom, which would be right about here, right through that X. So right here, I'm watching this X, and I know this is the halfway point right there. And so now, if I hold the Shift key and drag down, hold the Shift key and drag down, I can put my door here. I can also put some windows. Now, to connect the window, we need to go from not just from the corner. We have to go from the corner all the way back to this vanishing point. That's what makes it 2-point perspective. So it is kind of a pain, but what you're going to do is drag across, find your perspective, and then you can see, yes, that looks like it's a good window. Okay, we know the top line is correct because it's connected back to our vanishing point. Alright, so again, hold the Shift key and hold the Shift key and then drag from the bottom corner back toward this vanishing point, and you can see, yep, that's pretty good. If you have any extra, you can always erase it, but it looks good right here. Alright, so we've got 2 doors, a window. Let's see, we could actually bring these windows up a little bit bigger. Again, this is kind of your house. You make it how you want to. And I'm going to end up making these thicker. But if I do this, remember, I have to connect it back to the vanishing point to check to make sure it's accurate. So I'm going back toward the vanishing point. And again, bring this up. Bring this up. and back to the vanishing point to make sure it looks good. Once it looks good, I know it's accurate, and I can put that in. Now, let's thicken these up and do some erasing. Let's go back to a 3rd line thickness. That should cover up this little inconsistency here. So there we go. We've got the window. Drawn in 2-point perspective. Very good. And we can clean this up a little bit. Alright, so and then what we want to do is just go back and erase. So again, I'm going to change this to maybe an 8, and I can get rid of some of this excess here and here and here. Now if you need to zoom in, remember you can always zoom in and find your way a little bit easier when you're zoomed in. All right. So I'm getting rid of that. I don't need this. I don't need this. And I can scroll across and just trim this out because I'm not going to need this line anymore. If I get too much here, remember I can always go back to my 3rd line thickness, grab my straight line tool, hold the shift key and drag it across. Or maybe that was a 2 line. Control Z. Looks like that might have been a 2. So I'll go to a 2, hold the shift key and drag. Hold the shift key and drag. There it is. Alright, let's zoom back out to 100%. Alright, now on this side, let's go ahead and put maybe, I don't know, maybe we could put a garage door. A garage door. So what I would do is, again, go to the 1, because I am going to erase this. So when you're setting up your drawings, you're going to want to erase. So let's go just beyond the halfway point here. Something like this. And then hold the shift key, come down. Hold the shift key and come down. And that would set up a nice little place for maybe a car to drive in. And we could take the eraser tool now, enlarge that, and zoom in here. Just like we did before, zoom in and start to take this out. Okay, so again, this is all 2-point perspective. We're using the 2 vanishing points, the right and the left vanishing point, to make sure our orthogonals or our diagonal lines have a reference point or a place to go. So we always know that we're correct if we're always going back to this vanishing point on the left and this one on the right. Alright, let's get rid of this and then thicken the line a little bit. Let's go back to a 3, back to a straight line, redraw this. And redraw it. Alright, then we can come back with our eraser tool, and a 3 looks fine. And get rid of this one, maybe use a bigger, maybe more of a 10. Makes it a little easier to erase with the bigger eraser. Alright, let's zoom back out and check this out. Alright, very good. Now, we've got a basic house. You could add windows, doors, etc. You can add whatever you think you would like to add. In fact, I might even put... Control Z. That's a 10. I don't want to leave that on a 10. Let's go back to a 3 or maybe even a 2 for the garage door window. I want to make sure it's parallel. Something like that. And you know, you could do all kinds of things. You can put little circles on your door. I think we have a circle tool here. So if I grab a circle tool, I can put a little door handle. Yeah, very good. So let's do something else to give this a little bit of depth. Let's give this some space, some depth. And so we'll start again. Let's go with the third line thickness. And we'll grab our straight line tool, and right down here, we're going to hold that shift key. We're going to put another line, but this is going to be closer to the viewer. So we're going to start here with a leading edge, and then we're going to draw back to this line, or to this vanishing point on the right, back to this vanishing point on the right, and then for this one, what I want to do is I want to drop this down to a 1 because I have to go through my house and I do not want to mess up my house. So I'm going to take my cue by using this line, figuring out approximately where it should go, and then again I point it to this vanishing point, and when I think I have it, I'm going to move it back so it should be somewhere right about there. Same thing with the bottom vanishing point. I could draw it and then just erase it, but instead of doing that, I'm just going to keep it. I'm just going to try to estimate so that we want this line here to head back to this vanishing point, and this line here to head back to the same vanishing point. The lines to the right of our leading edge are going to head back to this vanishing point. All right, and then what we can do now that we have kind of the approximate correct shape, what we can do is use the shift key or not. That's the shift key going down. We're going to not hold the shift key going to the right, not hold the shift key going to the left, and we're going to go back this way. And then to close off this mailbox, we're going to make this into a mailbox, I think. We could make it into a doghouse, or you can make it into a mailbox. I'm going to make mine into a mailbox. So I'm going to hold the shift key, bring it up. When I connect it here, I'm going to hold the shift key and bring it to the left. And then I can erase these two lines that go back, or these three lines that go back to the vanishing point, because I don't need these. And let's use a little bigger, maybe a 7 here. Go ahead and erase that. Again, we can always come back and clean this up later, but for right now, it looks like there might be a little gap here, so I'm going to take care of that gap right now by going back to my third line thickness, grab my line tool, and get rid of this gap just in case there's a gap there. I don't want any gaps because I want to be able to color it. Remember, if there's any gap, you're not going to be able to color this easily. You're going to have to go back and plug those holes if there's any holes. Alright, so this kind of resembles a mailbox. Now we could get fancy and we could use the curve line tool. We could make it a little more fancy. But that's not really what I want to do here. But we could do that. You could come in. Let me just show you. You could come in and you could go across like this and then drag it up. Let's see. Drag it up. And drag it up like that. And you could make that into more of a mailbox, but you'd have to do the same thing back here. I guess we could leave that and make it look like the front door of the mailbox. And we could grab the straight line tool, draw a little flag that shows we've got mail. Or maybe that there's no mail in there. Or you could put the flag there, and then underneath, we're just going to drag straight down, hold that shift key right off the page, and we'll put the little post that it sits on. You could make the door open if you want. You could put a little, if you grab this rectangle tool or even this circle tool, Put yourself a little opening here. All right, and let's do one more thing again to take full advantage of this 2-point perspective. Let's go ahead and draw a driveway here, a driveway and maybe a little sidewalk coming out. All right, so what I'm going to do, take my line tool, third line thickness, and again, we know that we have to use this vanishing point over here. So what we're going to do is we're going to extend out. All right, this is where we know we have to go. That's going to end up coming out this direction. And then we're going to draw another line out this direction. That's going to give us the correct parameters. So what we want to do, what you could do, is draw it with the single line tool. That would make it easier to erase. But let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and just kind of see if we can draw it away from. Remember, it has to come from here. Follow that back, get your angle, and you want it to come out away from this vanishing point. So we're going to do the same thing. So we kind of get our bearings here. And this is another way to do it. If you don't like that way, what you could do is actually draw it like that, and then come in, use the eraser tool, and get rid of it. And that might be the best way to do it for some of you. Grab your eraser tool and clean it up. Just depends on how precise you want to be. But as long as it looks as though the lines are headed back toward the vanishing point, like this. This one definitely is headed back toward the vanishing point. And actually, look at that. It lines perfectly up with our mailbox here. So I'm erasing. And you can see this area has become our little vanishing point over here. Alright, then the next move is to go back, grab that line tool again, drop it to a 3-line thickness, and we're going to come off of this point here. So we're going to come down here. This will be the point we're using, so we have to come off of that point right there. So this line right here should point back to this point, and the same thing is true here. It's going to point past here. So we can see, oh, there it goes. There's the driveway, and the driveway is bringing us right to the mailbox so we can pick up the mail. And that's nice how that worked out. Okay, and then the last thing, let's put a little bit of a, go ahead down to a 1, and we'll come off this corner, and we'll put a little sidewalk here. We could put a sidewalk coming straight off like that, or you know what? Let's do something a little different. Let's go ahead and use this curve line tool. We haven't used that much, so let's use the curve line tool to bring the viewer down here to the mailbox. So let's go from here to maybe somewhere down in this area. In fact, Control Z, because we want to use a 3rd line thickness here. Let's use a 3rd line thickness. Come down. Remember, there's a 2 move. 1, 2. However you think it looks good. Maybe something like that. And then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come down, 1st line move, where we want it to end up. Let's say we want it to end up just a little bit beyond the mailbox. And we're going to drag and drag a 2nd time. So it's a 3-part move. And you can play around till you get that where you like it. Let's go back in, grab that eraser tool, and zoom us in. And zoom us across. There we go. Zoom down. Now we have to get rid of this area, so let's get the eraser tool, grab an 8, can just click and remove that line, the portion of that line, so this remains solid. It looks solid. All right, then we can come back in, use the line tool, use the third line thickness, and start cleaning this up. Like wherever there's cleanup that needs to be done, we can do some cleanup. If you want to get rid of these little dots, you can take your eraser tool and clean those up just by clicking. Alright, over here we can redraw this with a 3 and then come back in and erase some of it like a 10. Alright, now let's zoom out and let's see what else we need. Let's go ahead and put something in the background. So now we have the mailbox in the foreground, the house in the middle ground, and let's go ahead and make a little bit of a background. Now you could make a few other houses back here. There's all kinds of fun things you could do. Let's just keep it simple though. Maybe put some, I don't know, let's use the curve line tool to create some mountains, a mountain range here. Ooh, that's a little too big. Let's go here. Something like this. Bend that mountain a little down. And then come off here. Very good. And then maybe some more over here. Oops, Control Z. So I come out. Smooth that out. And then maybe another one here. Alright, looks kind of like mountains in the background. We can take this line tool and just give it some three-dimensional look here as well. Some jagged mountains back there. Alright, and maybe a circle for the moon or the sun. Hold the shift key. There we go. That's more balanced. It looks a little better. And then the last thing is to just go in and add some color. So we're going to grab our paint tool and we can change the colors here. I believe we can change the colors. Yeah. So if we click on this, I believe this is the left click color and this would be the right click color or the fill color. So depending on what you're comfortable with, maybe use a green, some kind of a green for the grass. So if I put the green here, and now again, if it leaks into other spots, then it means there's a little bit of a leak. So you just got to come in and look for any holes where the paint is coming through that area. And then maybe take, I don't know, blue, dark blue for the sky, maybe yellow, or kind of a light. Let me see. Let's take a look. See if we can't get a kind of a light moonlight. Something like that. For the house, I don't know, maybe let's see. I can play around maybe a kind of a purple house. But again, this is yours. Have fun with it. Oh, that purple, I don't like this a little too much. Maybe more of a magenta. Oh, little pink house. I guess that's alright. Make it a little darker on this side. So make it a little bit darker on this side. So it shows that the light is hitting the house and there's a little bit of shadow over here. And the garage door, maybe make it more of a blue. So I'm just left clicking, finding what I want. Maybe that same thing for the roof, although the roof and the sky look a little too similar. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to change that a little bit darker, more of a gray, to make the roof stand out a little bit. Alright, maybe there's some lights on inside, and maybe the front door is the same color as this door. So if you want to pick the same color, I believe there's a color picker. So this one right here, color picker, grab that color, it automatically puts it where you want it, so that when you come back to the paint, it's in there. So if I want to make this the same as the roof, the same as the asphalt, then I would come in, I'd use my color picker to pick it. So I pick the color, then I go back to the paint, and it's the automatic color. Now maybe I want to use the same color as I used as the moon, so I color pick the moon, left click on it, and go back to my my paint tool, and I can make that the sidewalk. And maybe the lights are off in there, so I'm going to make that a little bit darker. Let's go ahead and make that just a little bit darker, drag it down. There it is, lights are off in the garage. Alright, then we color the post with more of a gray for the post. And then the mailbox, maybe similar color as the house, right? Use a similar color as the house on the, oops. Color pick the house. Color pick the side of the house for the front. Use the paint tool. Color pick the front of the house and use the paint tool. And then maybe up here we make it a little bit lighter, so we come up here and make this a little bit lighter, drag it towards the light a little bit, just to show that it's getting hit by the moonlight. And then maybe we use that just as a contrasting feature. And then maybe a bright red flag on the side, and that looks pretty good. Now these moonlit mountains, here's what I would say. Let's go ahead and grab the straight line, go to a 1, because we don't really want this line to show up too much, but we also need it if we want to create another color. Oops, Control Z. Control Z, get rid of that. So we want to use the black outline and use a 1 line tool, and we're going to do something like that just to give it the ability to change colors. Now I don't think that made it all the way down, so let's go ahead and zoom in. Yeah, we have to go all the way through here. So now we can actually color these a little bit differently. Maybe we come in and look in these purple colors. I like these purples. That would be the dark side, so I'm going to use that for this side. And then the lighter side, I might use something closer to this moonlight color, and I can come in, I can make it a little bit darker so it looks like more of a mountain, but it also makes it lighter than the purple. In fact, that might be a little bit too much, so I'm going to bring that over a little closer. Something like this. Alright, so now, again, simple, but not so simple. So this is 2-point perspective, and a nice drawing here. 2-point perspective. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this. Take it, make it your own, and we'll see you in the next one.